Far away, in the outskirts of Forgotten City, stood an old hospital. Its windows were shattered, doors hanging loosely on their hinges, and the walls were cracked and weathered by time. People in the nearby town spoke in hushed whispers about the strange and terrifying sounds that came from within the abandoned building. Some claimed they saw shadows moving inside, while others insisted that anyone who entered never came out the same, or didn't return at all. I, the narrator, had always been drawn to stories of the unexplained, and this particular hospital had intrigued me for years. One evening, I decided to visit the place with my closest friend, Michael. As we approached, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of deep orange and red, casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. The hospital loomed ahead like a giant tombstone, silent and foreboding. With every step closer, my heart pounded faster. The air felt heavy, thick with dust and the faint smell of decay. A light fog swirled around our feet, as though the ground itself was exhaling a warning. "Are you sure about this?" Michael whispered, his voice trembling. I nodded, forcing a smile, though inside, I could feel the fear creeping along my spine. The main doors, enormous and rusted, groaned as we pushed them open. They moved just slightly, but it was enough to create a chilling sound that echoed to the empty hallways. Inside, the atmosphere was cold and silent, except for the distant creaking of the floorboards under our weight. The walls were lined with peeling paint, cracked tiles, and faded posters that once welcomed patients to the hospital. Every room we passed seemed to have objects that were out of place, chairs tilted, papers scattered, as if an invisible hand had moved them. Suddenly, faint footsteps echoed from a nearby room. Small, deliberate steps, as if someone or something was walking right behind us. Yet when we turned, the room was empty. I swallowed hard, trying to calm my racing heart, but the sensation of being watched made it impossible. As we continued down a long corridor, I noticed a shadow at the far end. It didn't belong to any person we could see. It moved with a purpose, gliding across the floor, and every instinct screamed at me that it was aware of us. Michael froze, his breath caught in his throat. I could feel sweat trickling down my back as we cautiously approached. Objects in the hallway suddenly shifted and fell to the ground with loud thuds. Doors slammed shut behind us, and the flickering lights made the shadows dance in a nightmarish rhythm. We entered the room where the shadow had appeared. Inside, we discovered old patient records and photographs that told stories of those who had mysteriously vanished over the years. Each photograph revealed faces filled with fear and despair. And then it struck me. The shadows were not mere tricks of the light. They were the spirits of the patients trapped within these walls, never having left even after death. The moving objects, the eerie sounds, they were signs of the restless souls trying to communicate their eternal torment. Suddenly, the shadow drew closer. We tried to open a door to escape, but every room seemed to lead us deeper into the labyrinthine hospital. A deafening crash echoed through the building as the door slammed shut behind us. My heart pounded so hard that I could barely hear myself breathe. The shadow was right there, looming over us, its form impossible to describe, a dark, shifting mass with a faint outline of human features. After what felt like hours, we finally found a way out. The night outside was darker than ever, and the streets surrounding the hospital were silent and empty. Fear still gripped us as we ran towards safety. But when I looked back, I saw a shadow in one of the broken windows, watching. It didn't move, didn't disappear. It remained patient and vigilant. And I realized, with a chill that ran down my spine, they would always be there, waiting for the next visitor to cross the threshold into the haunted halls of the abandoned hospital. Far into the night, deep within a dense forest, the moon barely touched the forest floor. The trees stood tall and close together, their branches twisting like dark arms reaching for the sky. I, the narrator, had joined a group of friends for a weekend camping trip, seeking adventure and a break from city life. Little did we know that this forest held secrets older and darker than any of us could imagine. As we arrived at our campsite, the air grew colder. Mist rolled over the ground in thin, ghostly sheets. We set up our tents and lit a small fire, the flames flickering nervously as if aware of something unseen watching us. The forest was silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves and distant calls of night animals. But something felt off. Every shadow seemed to move independently, stretching and shrinking in ways that made our skin crawl. Night fell completely, And with it came the first signs that we were not alone. Tiny sounds, whispers, soft footsteps, and branches snapping echoed through the darkness. Shadows appeared just beyond the firelight, vanishing whenever we tried to look directly at them. I could see the fear in my friend's eyes, reflected in the flickering flames, and I realized that we had crossed into a part of the forest where light and reason did not reach. Suddenly, a faint, high-pitched sound pierced the air. It was a whisper, calling my name, or perhaps just a trick of the mind. My heart raced as I turned toward the noise. The forest seemed to shift around me. Shadows stretched like black liquid along the ground, and the trees seemed alive, their branches bending unnaturally. "It's just the wind," Michael said, trying to calm himself. But even he didn't sound convinced. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to close in on us. The shadows grew bolder, moving closer to the tents. We could feel them watching, waiting, surrounding us. One by one, we noticed small objects near the campsite had shifted. Rocks, logs, even our gear. Something invisible was manipulating the environment, testing our courage, breaking our nerves. Then we saw it, a figure, tall and formless, standing at the edge of our firelight. It did not look human, yet it had a presence that made our blood run cold. The figure glided closer, its shape shifting, its edges blurred. Every instinct screamed to flee, but fear rooted us to the ground. It was as if the forest itself had come alive, a living entity feeding on our terror. Desperate, we packed up our tents and tried to run, but the forest twisted unnaturally, paths leading us in circles. Every shadow seemed to follow us, every rustle of leaves signaling imminent danger. The air was thick, making it difficult to breathe, and the whispers grew louder, more demanding, almost intelligent. It was as though the forest had a consciousness, and it was judging us, testing whether we belonged or would be claimed. A sudden, powerful sound shattered the silence, a branch snapping under immense weight, echoing like a gunshot. The shadows reacted, moving faster, closing in on us. Our only thought was survival, yet even in our panic, I couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched not just by the shadows, but by eyes hidden in the trees, unseen yet knowing everything. By the time the first light of dawn broke through the dense canopy, we stumbled into a small clearing, exhausted and terrified. The forest seemed calmer in the daylight, but an oppressive silence remained, pressing down on us like a physical weight. As we turned to look back, I saw the shadows retreating slowly, merging with the darkness between the trees. But they didn't vanish. They lingered, patient, waiting, as if the forest had not let go of us entirely. Even after leaving that night, the memory stayed with me. The forest had claimed a part of our souls, a fear that would never fully leave. I knew that anyone who ventured into that place after dark would feel the same presence, the same judgment from the shadows, and the forest would continue its silent watch over all who dared enter its domain. Far beyond the city streets, in the rolling hills of the countryside, stood Blackwood Manor. Its walls were tall and imposing, with ivy crawling across the stone in thick, tangled waves. Generations of the Blackwood family had lived there, and stories of strange occurrences, disappearances, and whispered voices haunted the manor for centuries. I, Emily, a young journalist, had come to document the legends, drawn by an insatiable curiosity and a need to uncover the truth. The journey to the manor was long and lonely. By the time I arrived, the sun had set, and a thick fog rolled over the hills, obscuring the path ahead. The manor appeared to the mist like a giant specter, dark and silent. The gates creaked as I pushed them open, and a chill ran through me. The air smelled of damp earth and decaying wood, and I immediately felt a presence watching me from within the manor's walls. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of corridors, hidden staircases, and rooms frozen in time. Dust coated the furniture, and cobwebs hung from chandeliers. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, as if the walls themselves were amplifying my intrusion. The portraits of past family members lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow my every move. Some faces were familiar from old newspaper clippings I had studied. Others were strangers, frozen in expressions of fear and sorrow. I began my investigation by exploring the library. The shelves were filled with leather-bound books, some with pages yellowed and brittle. I discovered journals detailing the history of the Blackwood family, including sudden disappearances and unexplained deaths. One entry described a strange entity in the manor, a shadow that whispered secrets and controlled the fates of those who dared enter. As I read, I could feel a presence behind me. A whisper, almost too soft to hear, called my name. I spun around, but the room was empty. Over the next several days, I explored the manor further, each room revealing new mysteries. I found a hidden study with letters detailing the final days of family members, and a music room where the piano would play by itself at night. The manor seemed alive, reacting to my presence, and I realized that it was not only haunted, it was sentient. Shadows moved just beyond the corner of my eyes, shifting and stretching as if watching me, waiting. One night, I entered the West Wing, a section long abandoned and said to be cursed. The air was colder here, heavier. As I walked down the hallway, I saw a shadow detach from the wall, forming the outline of a human figure. Its face was featureless, yet I felt its gaze pierce me. The whispers grew louder, filling the halls, telling stories of betrayal, sorrow, and vengeance. I understood then that the entity was bound to the manor, feeding off the fear and despair of those trapped within. Determined to uncover the truth, I followed the shadow to a hidden chamber beneath the manor. Candles flickered along the walls, illuminating ancient symbols etched into the stone. In the center lay a family portrait, torn and scorched, showing the very spirits that haunted the manor. I confronted the shadow, demanding answers, and it responded not with words but with visions. Memories of the family's torment of greed, betrayal, and curses cast generations ago. I realized that to free the trapped souls, I had to face the entity directly. The confrontation was terrifying. The shadow moved with a speed and force that defied human understanding. It swirled around me, darkness pressing in from all sides, whispers screaming in my ears. I felt my own strength waning, my body weighed down by fear. But I focused, remembering the stories of courage and resilience in the journals. I forced myself to stand my ground, speaking words of release and forgiveness, acknowledging the suffering that bound these souls. Slowly, the shadow faltered, shrinking, and the whispers began to quiet. By dawn, the manor seemed different. The oppressive weight had lifted slightly, and I could sense that many of the trapped spirits had finally found peace. However, as I prepared to leave, I glanced into a mirror and saw a faint shadow behind me, not one of the spirits I freed, but a lingering part of the manor itself. I realized with a shiver that though the spirits were gone, the manor's essence remained, and a part of me had been woven into its story. Blackwood Manor had accepted me as part of its history, and I would forever carry its whispers wherever I went. Even after leaving, I knew the manor waited. Its shadows, quiet but ever-present, observed anyone who came near, and those who ventured inside could feel it, a living memory of horror and sorrow, a reminder that some places never truly release the souls that enter.